Hi, everybody. Welcome into Talking Town, a bank holiday edition, as we talk about the new signing, our 11th signing, Dara O'Shea. Joining me back by popular demand, I'm not just saying this has been in our Discord, Chris, is Chris Hall. How you doing?
I'll take that. I'm all good, mate. Yeah, not bad. I don't think I've ever done anything by popular demand before, so I'm quite happy with that.
No, you should be. You should be. Yeah, you've got a little fan base building here in East Anglia. Most popular West Bromwich Albion fan in Suffolk, I would say.
Yeah, be more popular there than I am in the West Midlands, but that's not terribly difficult, if truth be told.
How's things? The last time we spoke to you, you were about to get married, and I can confirm to everyone that did take place because I was there.
Can you confirm it though, Matt? Because in the words of David Brent, El Vino did flow.
Yeah. Fortunately, not on your wife's wedding dress. It was a very close call, wasn't there?
Far off though, mate. She actually asked me the other day what I would have done if you'd spilt that wet red wine on her wedding dress, and I said I would have had polite words with you.
Yeah. Well, we've also seen a video of ourselves dancing today together, of which we have no recollection of.
No, none whatsoever, mate. Which, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, is the sign of a very good night. If you afterwards see content that you had no idea existed, or even the events that are captured in the content occurred.
Absolutely, it was a really good occasion, and on behalf of everybody who watches Talking Town, many congratulations.
Thanks,
to
mate.
You and Frankie, Chris. It's fantastic. Some sad news to begin with today, and you would have seen it, Chris, obviously, and people watching. Former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson has died at the age of 76. Sven, the first non-British manager of the England team, led the Three Lions to the quarterfinals at 3 major tournaments during his 5-year spell between January 2001 and 2006. And he sadly passed to cancer. But me and Martin were saying just before we came on air, Martin was like, I don't know, 10 or 11 or something. He was like the embodiment of coolness, wasn't he? This sort of new era that kind of came as England manager, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it was a real sort of step outside of the norm for the FA, wasn't it? Hiring Sven-Göran Eriksson, because it was, I mean, not only was he a non-English manager, but he hadn't actually managed in England at that point. You know what I mean? So it wasn't just going foreign for the manager. It was literally going abroad to somebody. And let's remember, back in those days, sort of like late 90s, early noughties. It's not like we had the access to foreign leagues like we do nowadays. Do you know what I mean? Like we knew he was doing a good job in Italy from what we heard. We knew his name, but to be honest, other than watching European Cup games and stuff like that and UEFA Cup games, we hadn't seen his team, so he was a complete unknown. But I mean, look, it will always be said about Sven, unfortunately, that he had an extremely talented group of players and maybe didn't quite achieve what he could have done. Some of it by being unlucky. You've got to say the penalty defeat to Portugal was really, really unlucky. In the one tournament, the defeat in the actual 90 minutes in his last tournament probably was less unlucky, and he maybe needs to carry the can a little bit for that, which is why he didn't continue after that tournament. But in terms of the football that he served up, it was fun, wasn't it? And I think one of the you know me, Matt. I'm a big fan of Gareth Southgate and will defend him to the hilt. But I do understand where people are coming from when they don't feel entertained in the group stages. They don't feel entertained as the tournament goes on. You couldn't level that at Sven, could you? At times it was balmy, and at times it didn't make sense. And he rubbed certain long-term England players and world-class England players as well, by the way, up the wrong way. People like Paul Scholes should have found his place in that team without a shadow of a doubt for me. But, it was always fun. It was always entertaining. And in the end, isn't that why we love football? Because this is what we do with our spare time. It's not work. It's not a vocation. Well, it has been a vocation for you and I, actually, but for most people, it's what they do after the working week is done. They sit down and they watch football. And for that very reason, football should be entertaining. It should be fun. And Sven, God rest his soul, he delivered us that entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think back to his first year, they win 5-1 in Germany, in Munich, in the Olympic Stadium. I mean, I've never seen, because of the lack of silverware that we've all seen England win, none, other than 66. It was like England had won the World Cup on the streets of Chelmsford. It was unbelievable. It's like stuff you see on the concert. When people are hanging out of cars and beeping.
I was fuming. I didn't get to see that game because my job at the time was waiter in a Chinese restaurant, and because obviously I'm a few years younger than you, so I was in the period of high school /
well,
I think maybe it might have been university holidays actually, but one of the two. Anyway, I was in education / working part-time, and my boss, who had no concept for football whatsoever, despite my repeated requests to have the night off, because I think it was a Saturday night, was steadfast and was you know, it's our busiest night of the week off. You can't have it. And I was furious. And there was a fella in there who had obviously booked the restaurant with his other half without checking the football or whatever, and had clearly been told by his missus that under no circumstances was he cancelling this meal and that he was to come along, who was keeping across the score underneath the table, and bless his heart, kept ordering drinks that he didn't want just to update me as the goals went in. So he kept signaling for me to come over to get him another pint of lager just so he could go, it's 4-1 now, which was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the following month was the Beckham free kick at Old Trafford. Again, never seen such limbs in Chelmsford pubs. It was unbelievable. I mean, these are just great moments. And as when we worked at the FA, and as Sir Trevor Brooking used to say to me, had Rooney not broken his foot in that Euro 2004 game against Portugal, but it then goes to penalties, doesn't it? Because he was 1-up at the time. I seem to recall. Sir Trevor always used to say we would have won that tournament. And, it would have been the changing face of English football. We wouldn't have had this kind of all these years of hurt, would we?
No, I mean Rooney was the best player at that tournament by a mile. And do you know what? You've got to give Sven a lot of credit because he took a chance on Rooney. Okay, Rooney was world class. There was no. I mean, he was unbelievable. But how? How many times have we had young England players and we've waited before giving them a chance? Jude Bellingham wasn't chucked in at the last tournament, even though many of us, not the one that just gone, but the one before that. Even though many of us thought he was more than ready for it, we've waited. And Sven wasn't afraid of throwing young players in. I mean, he took Walcott, and that was probably a bit of a mistake to the tournament before.
He was 17.
Yeah.
But, that's right.
But it showed he was fearless. And I mean, you've got to say the game that we lost against Portugal in his final tournament. If again out of Sven's hands a little bit, if Rooney hadn't got himself sent off, what would have been? Would we have lost that one on we ended up losing that one on penalties as well. I think I think it's one of those where you can look back on these tournaments and just say he was a bit unlucky. I mean, the two defeats to Portugal, he lost Rooney in both of them. One through injury and the other one through a red card. And
the winker,
the winker, you've got to wonder what might have been. I don't think 2002 will ever be remembered that fondly. We only lost 2-1 to Brazil, but to be honest, we were beyond outclassed in that game, weren't we? But I think the two defeats to Portugal, you've got to look at them and say, if we hadn't lost Rooney in both of those games, what might have been?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to sort of complete the circle with Sven, he actually has a connection with Ipswich, because I think when he was an up-and-coming coach trying to find his way in Sweden, he did what you would do back in the day. He wrote to Bobby Robson, said, "Can I come and watch you train?" Bobby said, "I'll do better than that. You can come and sit on the bench." So I think he sits on the bench in a Division 1 game, like 80-81 against Aston Villa. And I was saying to Martin, that would never happen now. The overcomplication of everything, we've been, haven't we, on the sidelines at games. It's just ridiculous. It would never happen. A much more innocent era, but then what a great story. He was like nobody sitting on the bench.
Oh, and I mean, and that's what you've got to love about Sven, because I mean, I never met the man. I don't know whether you came across him during your time at the FA, Matt. But
once I did, once.
Yeah, but everything I hear from people is that he was a fantastic guy who didn't take life too seriously. Look, we all know about the stuff around around his personal life, and we don't need to go into that. But I think it just goes to show how much he sort of looked at life as life's for the living. And whatever you want to say about the morals of it, fair enough. I don't think now's the time to go into that. But what I would say is, here's a guy who said, I'm going to make the most of my years on this planet, and people can think what they want of it, but I'm going to do what feels right to me. And people will. I'm going to sit and watch the Prime documentary on him. I'm sure it'll be very good. His career is a balmy one. It really is. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. Guy ended up at blooming Notts County, for crying out loud. You can't make head and a tail of it. But I mean, surely that's kind of what life's about a little bit. It's not following the established route. It's not, it's just doing what makes you happy. And in the end, the amount of times I've seen Sven on TV, I've never seen him without a smile on his face. And frankly, if we went through life with a smile on his face and joy in his heart, then who on earth are the rest of us to judge his choices?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well said, Chris. And he had that under the radar spell at Man City as well, like you say. There's some weird clubs there on his CV. But yeah, let's leave it now. Condolences to Sven, his friends and family, and God bless you, Sven. R.I.P.
Absolutely.
Okay, Chris, we're 2 games down in the Premier League now. Lost to Liverpool, lost to Man City. Surprise. We've made some additions since Manchester City. So that the evening after we lose 4-1 at the Etihad, we announced Jack Clarke. And then hot on the heels of that one yesterday was Dara O'Shea from Burnley. Very quickly, your thoughts on Clarke? I mean, he's been a real sort of standout, hasn't he, for Sunderland in that kind of like tricky left winger, Grealish style mould, isn't he?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, I think it's very easy if you're not a bit of a championship aficionado, which frankly, given the way that we've managed to get ourselves wedged in that division, I've become a little bit, to possibly not realise quite how good Jack Clarke has become, just because he had a pretty ill-fated Premier League move early on in his career, and and then just kind of. I think Jack Clarke is there as something of a cautionary tale for all young footballers, and not that I'm sending out a message to Mr. Tom Fellows, who's very much in a similar position for Albion at the moment. But just maybe staying somewhere where you're going to play is not a bad thing, because he obviously went to Spurs, he got bounced around on loan at QPR and Stoke, and just kind of really stagnated as a bit of a championship loanee, and ended up having to drop down to League One to kind of find his feet again. But since then, since Sunderland have come back up into the championship, he has got, in terms of goal contributions, 20 goal contributions in 22-23 and 19 in 23-24. 9 goals, 11 assists in 22-23 and 15 goals, 4 assists in 23-24. I mean, that is just staggering to nearly be at 20 goals and assists in 2 consecutive seasons. That doesn't happen. That's ridiculous numbers. And I think Premier League fans who don't watch a lot of championship football will think back to the young man they saw come and flounder a bit at Spurs and go, this is just a guy he's in that mold of too good for the championship but not good enough for the Premier League. I think if you're doing that, I think you're massively forgetting how young Jack Clarke was when he went in at Tottenham and couldn't make the grade, because he's only 23 now. And he has ripped up the championship for the last 2 seasons in a Sunderland side, which I have to say, although they're this sounds a bit stupid because they're top of the league at the moment. I don't think they're that good. Like they haven't had a centre forward of note really, given that Stewart's was injured when he was there, and they didn't really have a striker last season. Ended up playing Joe Bellingham there for much of the season. So Clark's had to step up and contribute the goals, but he's had to contribute assists as well. I just think he's a really, really good player, and I think he's ready for that next level. And I think it's so lazy when people sort of look at, for example, the business Burnley did last season and go, because these players are being bought from the Championship, they're not good enough for the Premier League. And I'd just like to point people towards Michael Elise, Eberici Eze, Jared Bowen, to name but a few. Adam Wharton. I'm trying not to name Crystal Palace players, but they seem to do a lot of business in
the model. Yeah,
exactly. So I just think there's so much evidence of the Championship being a really fertile breeding ground, and then you've got players like Solanke and Mitrovic who went back down to the Championship to kind of build themselves up, and then came back up and really took the Premier League by storm. I just think there's a really strong argument to say that if you can be at the level that Jack Clarke has been at, and not for one season but for two, because not any player can have a good season, but you can have a flash in the pan season. You can have a flash in the pan 6 months or whatever, but to do it for 2 seasons, and to do it in 2 completely different ways as well, because the first season was more assists than goals, and then the second season, like I say, Stewart went, and he had to take up the goal scoring mantle, and scored 15 goals.
It turns you on its head, yeah.
Exactly. So he showed he can do both. I think it's a quality signing. I really do. It's always difficult when you go into a club like Ipswich, because with the due respect, you're probably going to struggle. And he's, it's obviously easier to go into someone like Crystal Palace or West Ham, who are established Premier League clubs, because there's not the level of expectation on. But I think he's a good signing.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like you say, if you go into a Palace or West Ham, you, like you say, established in the Premier League, more than likely playing with established internationals in whatever position you've gone in. But I mean, going back to what you said there, I mean, like that has been McKenna and Ashton's model this season, hasn't it? Taking high achievers out of the Championship and bringing them into Portman Road. I mean, I think we've now, with him being the 11th, we've now signed everyone in every single position, outfield position. So it's going to be very, very interesting. I guess he's probably going to get minutes, I would have thought, against Wimbledon in the Carabao on Wednesday. And then, with Broadhead being out, and we've had to sort of square pegs round holes in that left side of the three, that in the attacking third for Ipswich, I think he'll probably start at home against Fulham. Now, whether or not we'll see Dara O'Shea start, not sure in that defence, but he's the latest signing, Chris. And of course, he came through at West Bromwich Albion, signed out of Ireland from St Kevin's Boys. I never knew there was a St Kevin. I mean, I don't want to turn this into talking to Catholicism, but these your Benedict, your Thomases, your Francis of Assisi.
Kevin doesn't get the credit he deserves, does he? I think that's basically what we're saying here.
No, so if you didn't know that, every day's a learning day here at Talking Town Towers. Yes, St Kevin. So I mean, look, he did like about 100 appearances for you, didn't he? O'Shea. I mean, playing the right side of the 2 centre backs. Is that his preferred role?
Generally, I mean, he actually broke into the side as a right back at the end of the Bilic promotion season, because we had a bit of a problem position, and he just it was an interesting one actually, because his contract was coming to an end, and I know from speaking to a few pals of mine in the game that he was and no, I will not concede that, because what I mean, first of all, Carlos Corberán, the job he's done on the resources that he's had is absolutely ridiculous, with a mess behind the scenes. I've got look, I'll say it again, I've got the utmost respect for the job McKenna did, but no, I won't concede that, because I don't think anyone outside of West Bromwich Albion can understand how difficult it was to manage that basket case of a club last season, with an owner who was basically stripping assets and a sale going through, and having had £0 to spend before this summer. With the best will in the world, as much as Ipswich have done a good job on a good budget, you were still able to pay money for people like George Hurst and people like that. We weren't able to do that. I think most clubs would have ended up having a season where they genuinely struggled against relegation, and for Corberán to get us into the playoffs was unreal. I think McKenna's a phenomenal manager, but could he have done the firefighting job that Carlos Corberán did and still achieve playoffs? We'll never know. We'll never know. But I think it takes a special sort of manager to do what Carlos
just for everyone who's listening on audio, the question came up on the screen here on YouTube that was, would Chris concede that McKenna was better than Corberán?
So no, I will never I will never concede that. But look, in all fairness, it's a bit of an apples and oranges type thing. By saying, because Twitter likes to do this, because if I say I like apples, it must mean I hate oranges.
Yes,
and I think they're both phenomenal managers, but I do think I do think Carlos still has done the better job. But anyway, going back to Dara.
Back to Dara, right back.
Yeah, well, no, I know from speaking to a few people in the game that his contract was up and his agent was talking to clubs. I mean, and clubs bottom end of Championship, top end of League One, and then he broke into the side at the end of the Bilic season and filled that right back role brilliantly and was just fantastic. And then he just never really stopped, because Nathan Ferguson decided to take his leave and go to go to Crystal Palace, which unfortunately never really worked out for him. And then he sort of he played between that right back and centre half role for most of the Premier League season. Had an all right season in the Premier League. I mean, not fantastic, but still made 12 starts. Made 25 starts. Sorry, in the Premier League, and had a good season in a poor side. And I think that was the point at which we all kind of woke up to the fact that Dara's a really, really good player. Next season was injury hit for him, and we lost him for a huge chunk of it. But where he sort of really made his mark was in 22-23, where he ended up our captain, played, started 37 out of 38 league games. We played 40. I'm questioning my. No, it's not 38 in the Championship, is it? But still, started 37 league games, and was just the heart of that defense. He really was. He's just an app. He's so committed. It wasn't a surprise to see him wear the armband so young, because he leads by example.
Who made him manager, and for what reason? Who made him manager? Which manager made him captain, and for what reason?
I'm trying to remember whether he was. So it probably would have been Ishmael at the start of that season.
Oh, okay.
Bruce. But no, I'm just trying to remember. Yeah,
so many managers.
That start of the Bruce season. The start of the
old campaign,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
So Steve Bruce made him captain. About one of the only good things Steve Bruce did, if truth be told. But he's just a brilliant. He's just a brilliant guy, from what I hear. I mean, the guys around the club said that he was so down to earth. Like, he'd come into the media office and just sort of just chat to the guys, or sit around playing games on their phones together, or whatever. He's like a proper club man. A real guy about the offices. And he's from what I gather, he's a nice fella. But on the pitch, he's a leader. He's committed. He's he doesn't shirk a challenge. He goes into things, but he can play a little bit as well. He was our passer out from the back. You know, he played alongside Eric Peters for most of that season. Peters' job was to give the ball to Dara, and Dara was the one playing the progressive passes out of defence. And look, I saw the video you guys had with the Burnley fan.
Burnley.
I
he had a
feel
question
like,
mark over his passing, didn't he?
but I feel like, look, we had this conversation last time I was on TT, and like for me, that's a problem. The problem with Burnley playing out from the back was Burnley's tactics. That Vince and company seemed to think he was manager of Manchester City, not manager of Burnley last season, and that he could play. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to Burnley, because calling anybody not Man City is not an insult. But I felt like they thought they could play the kind of football that Manchester City play in the Premier League as Burnley, and you can't. And if you ask Dara O'Shea to try and do things that, with the best will in the world, you're asking John Stones or Ruben Dias to do, well, he's not John Stones or Ruben Dias, because if he was, he wouldn't be signing for Ipswich Town, and it'd be costing you a damn sight more than 15 million quid.
Etihad for one. Yeah.
Well, exactly. So I think the way they played their football last season exposed their defenders and made them look a lot worse than they were. What I would say is under Bruce/Corbran that season, he was asked to be the one that was to play out from the back, but we weren't playing like this, that kind of crazy build-up that Burnley were playing. And he looked really good doing it. He looked really comfortable with it. He wasn't making a lot of mistakes. And I thought it was quite telling when you kind of like your Burnley fan got down to the crux of it, and you just saw him have this little moment where he thought about it, and he went, "Yeah, the majority of his mistakes were passing out from the back." And I thought, but that's your tactics for me. That's trying to do something that in the Premier League you really do need world-class players to be able to do, and you didn't have them. You had top-end Championship, bottom-end Premier League players, and Dara for me I think he showed himself at Albion in a very poor side to be a player who can play in the Premier League. He did stand out in that Premier League season for us, and I think anybody who says Dara O'Shea hasn't shown himself to be a Premier League player, I think, first of all, they need to go back and watch Albion's relegation season and see how good he was in a very poor side at a very young age. And also, I think they need to look again at what Burnley did last season and say, if you take the rather over-the-top company tactics out of it and look at what Dara did when he's defending, or when he is not being asked to play difficult balls into midfield, and when he's attacking set pieces, that actually try and find fault in a lot of that stuff, because I don't think you will. He had a mad moment at Everton, got himself sent off. Nobody's going to argue with that, but that can happen to any player. I think a lot of what Dara O'Shea did last season was very, very good. And when you actually look at the stats around him, 97th percentile for aerials won in the Premier League out of centre-halves last season. So he's one of the top 3% for aerials won.
He looks like he's got a good spring on him, because he's not the tallest, is he? He's 6'2", so that would put him on par with like a George Edmondson, but certainly he's below
6 foot according to FB Ref.
It's getting smaller.
Yeah, he's a bit of a powerhouse, and look, he's a threat in the opposition box as well. I mean, he was in top 8% of players at centre halves for touches in the opposition box last season. So I mean, he was one of Burnley's key threats actually going forward.
Got assists, didn't he? 4 or 5 assists, I think.
He got 4 assists, 3 goals, and I don't see how any Burnley fan can question that. That's your centre half in in a relegation season. I mean, I'm not being funny, but I think I do think there's a little bit of revisionist theory goes on when a team sells a player. But let me put it this way, right? Dara O'Shea was Burnley's top assister last season.
Yeah.
And he was their 6th top scorer. and he's their centre back.
He's their centre back. I tell you what, Chris, that's one thing I feel like. I don't know what all the Town fans think, watching or listening. That's something we've kind of missed, sort of goals from centre halves over. When we had Christoph Berra, Tommy Smith, and then kind of the third in there was Luke Chambers. We used to score quite a lot of goals from set pieces. Certainly that was under Mick McCarthy, right? So to maybe be expected. And that's something I think we're probably going to have to step up in the Premier League and actually see someone like a Dara or a Jacob Greaves actually become threats in the opposition box. I mean, O'Shea done it against Luton at Kenilworth Road at the top of the season, didn't he? A great spring in the 4-1 win. So I mean, maybe that's something that we will see from him this season.
I think so. And I mean, to answer Norman's question there, which he's asked, what are Dara's strengths and weaknesses? Strengths is, look, I think Dara's attitude and mentality elevates him as a player above his actual ability level at times. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I think there's something with, particularly with defenders. Listen to Gary Neville speak, and he will tell you that in that Manchester United academy there was multiple players with more ability than him, but he had the best mentality. And I think that's the case with Dara. I think there's more talented defenders than Dara out there, but his mentality will always elevate him above them. And I think that's a big strength of his. And whether it's attacking balls in his own box or attacking balls in the opposition box, I think that he will show his class there. I think he is calm and adaptable. I think he's better. I think just because he's sort of like a big burly Irish centre half, I think people pigeonhole him as obviously he can't play, and he can. He wouldn't have played right back for half a season for us if he couldn't play. So, and he can carry the ball forward as well. Weaknesses. Look, he will do whatever the manager asks him to, but if your manager asks him to do things that he's not capable of, he will still try and do them because he will try and carry out the manager's instructions. And he will make it. And I think that's what happened to him last season. I think at times he'll make himself look a bad player when he's not, but he will work to instruction because he is a real team guy. I think he's not the quickest, but he's not the slowest. You don't want Dara in a position where he's facing his own goal a lot of the time, because I think that's he's not Mickey van der Ven. You know what I mean? He's not one of these. He's not going to suddenly make up 10 yards on someone. I think positionally he's an excellent player, and I think he has got a turn of pace to him, but you don't want him to get turned around too much because there's going to be you're going to come up against some really quick forwards in the Premier League.
You've already had it.
Yeah, well, exactly. But you are every week, mate. And this is the thing. You can look at Liverpool and Manchester City and say we've already come up against that. But mate, you're going to come up against that when you play Crystal Palace, Wolves. We'll
see it Saturday with Traore. We mentioned it on the show yesterday.
Fulham,
I mean, he's speed merchant.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to come up against pace every week. You don't want Dara O'Shea getting turned around, particularly because he's not lightning. And whilst he's not slow, Premier League centre forwards, Premier League wide men can make reasonably paced defenders look slow in the Premier League. So you don't want him getting turned around. And I think that's key to Dara is, you can play a bit of a high line with him because positionally he is so good and he reads the game really, really well. And he will cut a lot of things out. But you don't want to play a suicidally high line because if you start getting balls popped in behind, he's not the guy, like I say, he's not the guy who makes up 3-4 yards.
That was the third goal against Manchester City at the Etihad on Saturday. Craig at Winchester says O'Shea is a definite upgrade on Wolfenden for me. Would you agree with that, Chris?
I mean, I haven't seen that much of Wolfenden, but having said, I have to go on what I saw last season against us. And what I would say is Dara O'Shea does not get beat up by Tom Fellows at Portman Road the way
I thought you might mention this. He then got turned, didn't he, in that game?
Yeah, exactly. Dara O'Shea doesn't concede that goal. Never. Not in a million years. Dara O'Shea does not get into a 50-50 battle with a young, precocious winger like Tom Fellows and lose. So I can't talk about Wolfenden's whole season. I'm sure it was very good. You wouldn't have got promoted if it wasn't. But just the little key moments that I've seen of him, and which were largely in Town versus Albion last season, Dara doesn't lose that battle. So, that's one thing that it's hard for me to talk about a player that I've not seen that much in Wolfenden, but I can talk about Dara and say he doesn't concede that goal for me.
He's got international experience as well. He's got something like bordering 30 caps for the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
So he's still mainstay there for them.
And there's a stat for you there. So I mean, he was clocked as the second fastest. I think he's one of those though. Like he doesn't have. I think he's got a decent top speed. I think he needs a little bit of ground to sort of get up to that top speed. I don't. He's never struck me as the kind of guy who's got that lightning acceleration. But look, it's always difficult with the eye test, and JC there might be absolutely right. My eyes might be lying to me. It's why it really annoys me when people say when I put data forward and people say, well, I don't care what the data says, I trust my eyes, because you shouldn't the vast majority of the time. And I might be watching Dara and thinking he's slower than he is, just because he's maybe got exposed by somebody really, really fast. Thinking back to Nathan Teller absolutely destroying us at Burnley and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about him playing out from the back, are we saying that he's going to take the ball from the keeper and bring the ball into midfield? Are we saying that he's one or two touches, it will go to Morsey, or it's going to go out onto the flanks? I mean, what would you expect there?
I think he can do a little bit of both, if truth be told. I mean, I think, as I say, it depends what your manager asks him to do, because I think Dara O'Shea will do what he's asked to do because he's that guy. Yeah. This is why he got handed the captain's armband, because he is that guy. He's the guy that if the manager asks him to jump, he asks how high. Like and I think if the manager says, look, our key out ball is, I don't know, Leif Davis or whatever, he will play that ball. If he says the key out ball is Morsey, he will play that ball. If McKenna says, if you see space ahead of you, drive into it, I'll drive into it. I don't think there would have been the volume of interest in Dara O'Shea that there was.
You thought he was going to Wolves, didn't you?
Wolves, but there was a couple of other clubs linked as well, and Burnley were very keen to keep him as well. If people didn't view him as a Premier League defender, it always makes me chuckle when people seem to think that recruitment departments at Premier League clubs don't know what they're doing. If there's two or three clubs desperately beating down the door for the same player, then they're probably pretty decent and probably of Premier League standard.
Yeah,
I think Dara, he is not, for me, he's not elite at anything, but he is very good at quite a lot of things. And as I say, I think the levels of commitment that he puts into the game then elevates him to another level. And I think he can pass a bit. He's not Franz Beckenbauer, Rio Ferdinand, like incredible crossfield balls. You're not really going to see that from him an awful lot, but he can make a pass. He's not uncomfortable on the ball. He has got a surge into midfield in him. Positionally, I think he's really, really good. Aerially, he's definitely really good, especially, and belies his height. And he grows a couple of inches when he jumps because he commits to everything. He's 100%er. And I just think you're really, really. I think you're really gonna like him. I think he will carry out the manager's instructions to a T, and to that end, he might make the occasional mistake because he might do things that he's not 100% comfortable with because it's what he's being asked to do. But I tell you what, the manager will love him. The other players will love him as well. Might smash one or two of them in training, but I think when they pick themselves off the floor, they'll love him. And yeah, I just think he's. I think the other thing that you've got to take into account is that being successful is more than just good players on a pitch; it's good personalities as well.
That's a big thing for McKenna and Ashton. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you've 100% bought a good personality. You know, a guy that is going to go into the dressing room and he's going to be well liked, and he's going to go out on the training field and he's going to raise standards. And I always remember talking to somebody when I was working at it was just after I'd left at the Albion, actually, and we just stayed up by the skin of our teeth under Pepe Mel, and we'd sold Shane Long in the January. And I remember chatting to somebody and saying, and them telling me that when Shane left, training just went down by 1 or 2% in terms of the intensity because of what Shane brought to training. The way he used to just be 100% all the time, cannon around, never give defenders a minute. And I think having those personalities, and I got told as well by somebody that we wouldn't have gone down if we'd not sold Jonas Olsson in the January. And I thought that was a strange thing to say because Jonas had barely played a minute that season. And they said to me, but he maintained standards in training. And I think having people like Dara who will maintain levels, who will demand the best of those around them, who if they see somebody at 80% will call them out on it and will not accept it. And even if that 80% is in training, we'll call them out on it and basically say, where are your levels today? And I think you need those people. And Dara, for me, is definitely one of those people. So it's not just the player you're getting, it's the personality as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there we go. I think he sounds real. You can see why he's coming at Portman Road. It'd be very interesting to see if he does take Wolfenden's place, be it Wednesday or on Saturday, and how he actually brokers a combination with Jacob Greaves on the left or Burgess, whoever that will come in. So great stuff, Chris. Excellent. Where can, if people want to hear more from you, which I'm sure they do, given how popular you are, tell us a little bit about Albion Analysis, where they can find that.
Yeah, I mean, Albion Analysis, wherever you get your pods, really, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just search Albion Analysis. So we've also got a Substack with some written material as well, if you want to delve a little bit deeper on that as well. And look, there's even if you don't want to sort of listen to the week by week Albion content, and I'd understand if you didn't want to. If you have a bit of a scan through the podcast, there's some specials in there as well with ex Albion players. One with Peter Odd and Wingy this summer, which is a good listen if you want to hear exactly what happened that infamous deadline day.
Yes.
I did one last summer with Nathan Ellington. Wasn't he briefly a Town player? Was he? Were you one of the many clubs that he rocked up to? So if you want to hear a bit with Nath, there's one from there last summer. So there's a few specials with former Albion players as well. If you want to go back and have a listen to those.
Great stuff. All right, Chris, thanks very much. Just to let you know, everybody, there's a Formula One show tonight, so everyone is into their racing. That's on at 7:15 this evening with Steve, Neil and Chris. So that's 7:15 tonight. Okay, good one, Chris. Thanks very much. It's a busy week for the town. Like we said, we've got the Carabao stuff coming up this week. I think there's going to be shows tomorrow. We've got the game Wednesday. We're going to do the Fulham preview on Thursday. So lots of content coming your way. And if you want a bit more West Bromwich Albion, check this man out. All right,
yeah.
We'll see you
and
soon.
Good luck to you guys whenever you visit the Molineux and Villa Park as well.
Of course. Yeah. All right, see you soon, everyone. All the best.
Talking Town, proud to partner with Match Bingo. Play Match Bingo, win cash prizes. And each time you play, support the crucial work of the East Anglian Air Ambulance. Download the app through your App Store or Google Play or however you get your apps. Match Bingo. Play Match Bingo, win cash prizes. Over 18s only, be gamble aware. SolarWise Roofing and Building Services Limited. Solar panels, roofing services, UPVC roofline, groundwork services and more. Call 01206 628 544, that's 01206 628 544, or visit solarwiseroofingandbuilding.co.uk. Stowmarket Osteopaths. Freddie's the governor here. Give him a call on 01449 613 633. Don't live life in pain. Visit Stowmarket Osteopaths for physiotherapy, osteopath, Pilates and more. That's Stowmarket Osteopaths on 01449 613 633.